What's going on, guys? We're back for another build feature, and today we've got 48 hours to attack the track. So what exactly does that mean? Well, John's back with us again today, and he's brought a new car to us, and you said it was an Audi A3.
Yes, sir.
An Audi A3. And we're here to basically build a car in 48 hours.
We got 2 days.
And it's gonna have to be a car that shreds tires and wins podiums, right?
Yes, sir.
There we go. So this summer we'll be going to CSCS racing. Shout out to the CSCS guys, to go compete into the production class.
Absolutely. So this is a 2015 Audi A3 S-line. The S-line trim, you get a couple little added features like a black headliner and little things like that. Essentially, this car is a GTI 2-liter motor that you would see in a Volkswagen GTI, but with a Golf R drivetrain, so you can kind of relate to it. So being like an S3 is basically a sedan version of a Golf R. This is essentially a sedan version of a GTI, but with the added all-wheel drive. It's got the Hall decks in the back. This car has about 220 brochure horsepower. What we're going to aim for with it is obviously focus a lot on the weight of the car, focus a lot on the suspension components of the car, and we want to be able to touch 400s.
So as a build envelope, the Audi A3 already is a pretty good car to contend with. You've got Quattro.
Yeah.
You've got, what is it, the EA 888 engine, that 2-liter from Volkswagen.
Yeah.
You've got a turbocharged, nimble car. I wouldn't say fast, but it's nimble.
Not out of the box, but there is a lot of potential in this.
There's potential there. We're going to uncover it.
Awesome.
We've got the car on the hoist. We're losing daylight here. In the first 24 hours, we've got to get a lot of work done. So John, what do we actually need to make the A3 competitive on the track?
So basically we got the 2 days to work with. So on day one, we're going to do the suspension bits, the braking bits. And then day two, we're going to hop into a lot more of the performance, the engine components and stuff like that. So we're working with some awesome companies. We're working really closely with AM Tuning on this car. We're also working with KW, VWR, Unitronic, lots of big names going into this one. Yokohama, as you see tires in front of me here. These are the ones that we'll be featuring on the car. So day one, we're going to hop into the suspension. We're going to have the VWR 6-pop big brake kit, stage 3 up front. Rears, we're going to be doing RS3s. We're going to be doing the JXB suspension bits, so we're going to have their Aurora spherical bearings, front control arms, rear trailing arms, all the weak points of the car essentially, and the MQB chassis. And then we're going to put in the KW Club Sports. So that's super exciting.
Now that you mention it, there's a lot of bits from the RS3s that are going into this build. So I guess on the 8V, the Audi 8V platform, there's just that much crossover between those two cars.
As far as suspension is concerned, yeah, there's a lot of main similarities. Differences, obviously, you got the 2.5 motor in the RS3. It's incredible platform, but the MQB is not that far behind it. I mean, when you put the tuning on it, and then you start playing around with the parts, you got downpipes, catback exhausts, and then you do like an IS38 IHI turbo in it, then you're playing with power, and they're not too far off.
All right, boys, let's get into it. Let's get greasy.
put the KW Club Sport coilovers up front. So we remove the top 3 bolts, and then we remove the nut that goes in and holds everything and clamps it all together. We had to remove the axle nut. Everything pulls apart. Coilover slides out. Put the new one in. They're pretty significantly shorter, so it's a lot easier going in than it is coming out. And yeah, so it's time to adjust these puppies.
KW puts a lot of effort in providing the correct product data and setup data for your vehicle. So depending on the height adjustment that you want within range, because I think the range on this was what, 40 to 60 millimeters in height. From there, you're going to adjust the preload accordingly. There is information in the instructions for you to do so. And then you're going to adjust the damping, both the rebound and the compression, to their recommended specs. Now, when we're going to go to the track, we're going to fiddle with it. Since we're going to be on the road course, we're going to see what the car and what John likes to drive with, and how aggressive he can get. But for the time being, the recommended specs are absolutely perfect for us to drive it to the alignment shop and actually get the car corner balanced and dialed in. If you're still unsure about how these kind of coilovers are set up, I will send you over now to Ben, because Ben knows best. You can talk more about the KW Club Sport line between the 2-way and the 3-way.
All right, so I'm back. As you saw, we just installed the Club Sport 2-ways from KW on John's S3. So KW, massive history in motorsport, basically known as one of the best, if not the best, suspension companies in the world. All manufacturing's done in-house. They have a couple different lines in their suspension, so it just depends on what you plan to do, just like with the tires. KW has a variant series or a V series with V1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically, the variant series is a more street-oriented coilover, V1 being just a height adjustable coilover, V2 being rebound adjustable, V3 being rebound and compression, and so on and up from there. The Club Sport is a happy mix between the motorsport and the street side, so these are actually quite comfortable on the street. They still feature the dual flow valves from the Variant 3 coilover, so they are quite comfortable still, but then they come with your top hat, so you have the camber adjustment, and then you have more adjustments as far as damping is concerned. And then the Motorsport Series coilover, which is essentially the top echelon of the performance coilovers from KW. Most of these, if not all of these, are going to be custom made for the application. With John's car here, we just went with a Club Sport just because the car is going to be street driven. The price jumps up quite a bit when you're going up to a motorsport. All right, so we're going to dive in here to the Club Sport, which is what we put on John's car. KW, what they're really well known for is being German made, but then also too that they use a fully stainless steel inox body. That basically just reduces obviously corrosion because stainless steel doesn't stain. Then you also have the trapezoidal threads, which again KW is known for. You have your composite spring perches, which again just reduces the amount of corrosion. They'll never really seize on you. Just the ease of adjustment is a lot smoother sliding than a metal on metal. Depending on the application, but typically you're going to have a spring with a helper. So that basically just keeps downward force on the spring to stop the spring from rattling around when under full droop. You have your camber adjustable top hats, again, depending on the application, but this one specifically did have it. And then John went with a 2-way. The reason for this is just because the class that he's racing in is the max 2-way adjustment. This one's actually a 3-way, so you're going to have high and low speed compression and then a 1-stage rebound. On John's, you're just going to have your rebound and your compression adjustment. Even though it does have similar adjustment to the V3, the Variant 3, basically the difference is you have an external reservoir that gives you more oil capacity, so when the oil heats up, your damping rates don't really change. But also too, these do have the dual flow valve in the compression circuit, just like the V3, so that's why this is a happy kind of middle for street and track, and essentially just gives a really good ride for the street while being still extremely competitive on the track. For the vast majority of customers, the Variant series is still a phenomenal coilover on the track. They do not come with a top hat. That's one of the biggest things, and that's just because top hats basically introduce quite a bit of NVH into the actual car. And for those of you wondering, NVH is noise, vibration, harshness. Basically just anything that can dampen the vibrations coming from the street is going to improve the ride of the suspension. Whereas with the Variant series being street oriented, reuses your rubber upper mounts, and that just takes a lot of NVH and harshness out of the ride. You guys on the street who are driving their car the majority of the time and going to the track, Variant series is going to be more than good enough for you. But then if you want to be a little more competitive, or if it's a car that you drive to the track and then track quite often, the Club Sport's going to be the way to go. And then if you want to be as competitive as humanly possible, then basically going to a full motorsport setup, but that's not going to be streetable. No matter what your setup, KW is going to have a great option in their line for you. It just depends ultimately what your goals and what your aspirations are for your build. So let's get back to the build here and see what they've got going on.
So yeah, we're just going to wrap up front, and then we're going to head to the back, start working on the rear axles, and then what are we going to do? We're going to jump on the brakes after, John?
Yeah, we're going to do the control arms, front and rear. We're going to do the trailing arms, and then we're going to hop on the front and rear brakes. So.
Okay, let's get to it.
Sweet. All right, so we just took out the stock control arms. We're going to send these back as core, so you can see what happens on these. Bushing kind of just slips out. Sometimes they tear. Sometimes you get this as an end result. We are changing these, of course, because we do have a little bit of an issue with them, but also we're going to take the time to upgrade. So what we got now in the new ones is we got some nice spherical Aurora Bushings. So basically, like, these are very low maintenance. They're very solid, very nice. Obviously, they're going to have a better lifespan on them. This is actually, JXB is the only one that makes one that upgrades both bushings. So we also got the inner bushing here that is also spherical. So this is going to definitely solid up the front end. Also, we just did the sway bar links. KW Club Sports come with their own. We're going to stick with the stock front sway bar for now. I'd like the car to be a little bit more tail happy. So in order to achieve that, we will be upgrading the rear, but the front's going to stay stock with the KW end links. So. All right, guys, that's it for day one. I'm just going to finish up a couple more things on the car, and then I'll wrap it up for the day. As you can see, we got a lot in store going on tomorrow, so we'll see you then.